There was a bank robbery that was committed by two amateur robbers. Let's just call those robbers as Yu Jiang and Asep. Outside of the bank, there was a police officer called Inspector Dadong. He and his subordinates were watching that bank robbery. Inspector Dadong was disappointed and mad at his subordinates because they were still unable to take care of that problem. Inspector Dadong's subordinates couldn't do anything because a bank robbery carried a high risk even though it was committed by two amateur robbers like Yu Jiang and Asep. Meanwhile, inside of the bank, Yu Jiang and Asep got into an argument. They argued about who should kill the victims. At the corner of the Black Cock Street, there was a former Yakuza member called Kazuma. Kazuma had been just released from the prison. When he was looking for something in that mini-market, a man suddenly tried to attack him from behind, but Kazuma managed to avoid and defeat that thug in less than a second. Apparently, that thug brought some friends with him. Even though Kazuma was attacked by a gang of thugs, he managed to defeat that gang, but apparently, there were still more thugs who had been waiting to attack him. Kazuma had no idea who sent them to attack him. He told two random strangers called Dodit and Ningxi who were watching him fighting those thugs to get out of his way. After Kazuma defeated all of those thugs at the mini-market, he picked and bought a pack of dog food. Then, he gave that pack of dog food to a little girl called Ayu because that girl wanted to feed some stray dogs. Kazuma had to look after Ayu for a while because Ayu's mother had gone. He had no idea where Ayu's mother was. There was a leader of Yakuza called Margono. One night, a mysterious man from South Korea visited his bar. That man asked Kazuma's subordinates to watch over him. Let's just call that man Slamet. It could be seen that Slamet was injured. At the same time, a random Yakuza member called Shalikin was surprised when he heard that Tojo Gang lost $10 million in the bank. Shalikin was Kazuma's nemesis. Meanwhile, Tojo Gang was the name of Kazuma's gang. Kazuma created that gang before he was put in the prison. Shalikin's subordinates suspected that Kazuma was responsible for Tojo Gang's money that had lost in the bank. At a cafe, Ningxi told Dodit that she had stolen an amount of money from the mini-market they visited before. Dodit was surprised when he found out about that. He planned to return that stolen money to the mini-market, but Ningxi asked Dodit to steal with her instead. She said that she had a knife to protect themselves. Ningxi and Dodit finally decided to rob a cafe. They used Ningxi's knife to threat all workers in that cafe. Even though their robbery went successful, Dodit still didn't understand why Ningxi wanted to rob. At the same time, the two amateur robbers were still inside of the bank. Inspector Dadong said that the bank that was being robbed by those amateur robbers didn't have any money. Inspector Dadong believed that this strange situation had something to do with $10 million that belonged to Tojo Gang that had been missing from all banks in that city. He refused to take care of this case because he didn't want to deal with Yakuza. At Margono's bar, Margono's subordinates were troubled by Slamet because Slamet didn't understand Japanese. Slamet only spoke and understood Korean. Because of that, Slamet made some drinks for them to express his gratitude to them. At the same time, when Shalikin and his gang were walking down the Black Cock Street to find Kazuma, they were stopped by some local thugs who were disturbed by their presences. While Shalikin's gang and those local thugs were fighting with each other, Shalikin entered a store where a random man called Gupin lived. Gupin was an informant who knew about all information from the underworld in that city. He was also an illegal arms dealer. Shalikin visited Gupin because he wanted to ask Gupin about Kazuma's whereabouts. Gupin asked him to give him something as a payment for that information. Apparently, that something was a torture from Shalikin and not money or any valuable thing because Gupin was a masochist. At the end of the day, Gupin didn't give any important information about Kazuma to Shalikin. He only told Shalikin that Kazuma was being chased by another gang in that city for an unknown reason. After that, Shalikin picked a rifle that was being sold by Gupin. He got out of the store and killed his opponents with that rifle. Inspector Dadong met with Kazuma. Apparently, Inspector Dadong and Kazuma knew each other. It seemed like Inspector Dadong was highly respected by Kazuma. Inspector Dadong asked if Kazuma was responsible for the $10 million that belonged to Tojo Gang that had been missing from all banks in that city. Kazuma was confused when he heard Inspector Dadong's question. He said that he was busy looking for Ayu's mother. Inspector Dadong told Kazuma to be careful because Shalikin's gang and Tojo Gang were suspecting him. A few hours had passed. The two amateur robbers Asep and Yu Jiang hadn't finished robbing the bank. They didn't care if they hadn't found any money in that bank and that they were cornered because the police officers had been waiting for them outside of that bank, and Inspector Dadong's subordinate called Yudin was sick of that situation. At the same time, Kazuma and Ayu visited the Margono's bar. Everybody in that bar was surprised when they saw Kazuma in that place. They bowed to Kazuma immediately to greet and show him respect. Kazuma came to that place because he was looking for Margono. He worried about Margono because he hadn't heard anything from him for these past few days. Margono's subordinates had no idea where Margono was. They also hadn't heard anything from their boss for these past few days. Kazuma came to that place not only looking for Margono, he was also trying to find information about Ayu's mother. He knew that Ayu's mother worked in Margono's bar in the past, but she didn't work there anymore. Then, Ayu showed a picture of her and her aunt to Kazuma. Let's just call Ayu's aunt Yuli. Kazuma was surprised when he saw that picture because Yuli was his ex-girlfriend. Like Ayu's mother, Yuli had also gone missing. Ayu had no idea where her aunt was. She then began to cry. Kazuma, who saw that, tried to cheer her up. Not long after that, Kazuma received a phone call from Margono's subordinate. Margono's subordinate told him that there was something strange with the disappearance of Margono. Kazuma asked him to meet him in a place at the Black Cock Street. After Shalakin's gang and the local thugs were finished fighting with each other, Inspector Dadong ordered his subordinates to withdraw from that place because he believed that there was going to be a bloody murder. Inspector Dadong warned the police not to interfere with Yakuza's business. He was worrying because Kazuma began to feel annoyed by Shalakin and his gang. He believed that there was going to be a horrible mass murder if the police insisted on interfering Yakuza's business. After the police officers heard that, they finally agreed to withdraw from that place. At the same place, Slamet began to make his move. He met with his informant and asked him where he could buy an illegal weapon. He also told his informant that he knew the man who was responsible for the Tojo gang's money that had been missing. Let's just call Slamet's acquaintance as Jankrik. Slamet planned to kill Jankrik because he wanted to save Yakuza. A couple, Ningsi and Dodit, visited Guping in his place to buy a gun. Nobody had idea about what Ningsi was going to do with that gun, including his boyfriend Dodit. But because of his love for Ningsi, Dodit agreed to buy a gun for her. Slamet suddenly came to that place. He also visited Guping because he wanted to buy a gun. While he was browsing around that place, he asked Guping about Jankrik's whereabouts. Dodit and Ningsi were confused when they saw Slamet talking to Guping because they didn't understand Korean. They were also confused because they had no idea about which gun that they were going to buy. Slamet suggested Dodit to buy a gun that was easy to use. Ningsi told Guping that she was going to use that gun to find an amount of money. After Slamet, Ningsi, and Dodit left that place, Guping called someone immediately. He told that person about Ningsi and Dodit. He revealed that information to that person because he worried that Ningsi and Dodit were going to interfere with Yakuza's business. When Kazuma was going to meet Margono's subordinate, he finally met Shalakin and his gang in the street. He and Shalakin went to a place because they had to finish their business first. 10 years ago, before Kazuma was put in the prison, Kazuma was having a problem with Shalakin. One night, Shalakin wanted to solve their problem by fighting with each other. Kazuma agreed with his solution. Turned out, Shalakin was not as strong as Kazuma. It was easy for Kazuma to defeat Shalakin with just a single punch. Shalakin's subordinates who were watching them fighting admitted that Kazuma was really great. They now believed that Kazuma was a living legend and they were not supposed to disturb him. Shalakin was upset because he felt humiliated by Kazuma. He took his anger out on his subordinate by kicking him on the chest. Then, he asked Kazuma for another fight. This time, he tried to use a fighting technique called the Flying Frog. But Shalakin still failed to defeat Kazuma even though he had used a knife during their fight. He humiliated himself by being ridiculously defeated by Kazuma in front of his subordinates. Shalakin's subordinates finally called an ambulance to bring Shalakin to the hospital because he was badly injured. But before the ambulance arrived at the hospital, Shalakin suddenly got up and hijacked that van. He wanted to get back to his previous place and challenged Kazuma for another fight. In the bank, the amateur robbers Asep and Yujang finally decided to have a dinner with the bank employees. They asked the police officers to order them some bentos. The police officers were still watching them from outside. They still had no idea how to catch those robbers without hurting the bank employees whom those robbers were taking as their hostages. At the same time, at the rooftop, Slamet was testing the gun that he had just bought from Guping. He fired his gun to a satellite television that was located at another building. While he was busy firing his gun, he accidentally saw Ningsi and Dodit were being intimidated by Yakuza. Yakuza found out about Ningsi and Dodit's plan after Guping told them. Dodit panicked and accidentally shot a member of Yakuza. Dodit had no idea why he and Ningsi were being chased by Yakuza. Apparently, Ningsi had hidden something from him all this time. Beside the information about their plan that had been revealed by Guping to Yakuza, another reason why Yakuza was chasing them was because Ningsi was borrowing a large amount of money from one of their members. Because of that, Ningsi began to rob some stores and cafes. She wanted to pay off her debt to the Yakuza member who lent her money. She didn't want to deal with Yakuza anymore. While Ningsi was telling everything to Dodit, the Yakuza member whom she was talking about suddenly came to their place and aimed a gun at them. Then, he and Ningsi shot each other. The Yakuza member died instantly. Meanwhile, Ningsi got shot on the stomach. At midnight, Kazuma, Ayu, and a Margono subordinate came to Guping's place. Kazuma wanted to get important information from Guping, but Guping only told him that Ayu's aunt Yuli once worked as a prostitute at a public bathing. After that, Kazuma and Ayu went to the public bathing that was mentioned by Guping. He met and followed a receptionist who was working there. Apparently, that receptionist was one of Shalakin's subordinates. He took Kazuma and Ayu in a room where Shalakin and his armed gang had been waiting for them. As soon as Kazuma arrived in that room, Shalakin and his subordinates shot him relentlessly. While Kazuma was under attack, he told Ayu to go to the second floor to look for her aunt. He also asked her to find information about her mother. Even though Shalakin was Kazuma's nemesis, he didn't want to hurt Ayu because Ayu was a child. He also refused to lie to her. he allowed Ayu to go to the second floor. Meanwhile, he was going to finish his business with Kazuma. After Ayu left that place, Shalakin began to relentlessly shoot Kazuma again. Kazuma suddenly had an idea to defeat Shalakin and his gang. Kazuma managed to defeat all of Shalakin's subordinates by using a piece of broken glass. After that, he defeated Shalakin and went to the second floor immediately, but Shalakin didn't want to give up. He followed Kazuma and asked him for another fight. Kazuma was already tired. He didn't have much energy to fight anymore. Because of that, Shalakin managed to attack Kazuma easily. He suddenly became stronger than he was before. He wanted to use this moment to kill his nemesis, but when he was about to kill Kazuma with his knife, Shalakin died instantly. Surprisingly, Margono appeared in that room and killed Shalakin. Inspector Dadong also came to that room. Apparently, Margono had been released from the prison by Inspector Dadong. There had been a misunderstanding all this time. Margono told Kazuma that the person who had stolen $10 million that belonged to Tojo Gang from all banks in that city was Ayu's mother. Because of that, Ayu's mother was being captured by Tojo Gang in a building. After Kazuma found out about that, he and Ayu was heading to that building immediately. While they were heading to that building, Kazuma's former subordinate, who was also a member of Tojo Gang, suddenly came and shot Kazuma on the stomach. He also took Ayu away by force. Kazuma went to his doctor's house and treated his wound there. After that, he took a bottle of energy drink and went to the building where Ayu's mother was being captured by Tojo Gang. While he was heading to that building, he saw a helicopter heading to that building too. When he arrived in that building, he saw his ex-best friend who had become his enemy waiting for him there. His ex-best friend was called Nario. He was the new leader of Tojo Gang. Kazuma and Nario finally got into a fierce fight. Kazuma didn't care that he was still badly injured. Nario managed to defeat Kazuma in that fight. When Nario's subordinates were about to get rid of Kazuma's body, Kazuma drank a bottle of energy drink which he took from the house of the doctor who had treated his wound. Nario's subordinates were surprised when they saw that. They took some steps away from Kazuma as if the energy drink that Kazuma was drinking was a holy drink. As they had expected, after Kazuma drank a bottle of that energy drink, Kazuma became way much stronger than he was before. He beat up all of Nario's subordinates right away. When Nario saw that, he walked toward Kazuma and punched him with all his might. Kazuma finally managed to defeat Nario. After that, Yuli suddenly appeared in that room. Yuli revealed that she was actually Ayu's mother herself. She had lied to Ayu all this time. She forged an identity of Ayu's mother as a part of her game. Then, she pushed a button of a remote control that she was holding. That button was going to activate and denote a bomb. Yuli told Kazuma and Ayu to get out of that building immediately because that place was going to be destroyed by a bomb soon. At another building, Slamet was watching Jankrik, who was inside of a helicopter. When that helicopter was about to land, this thing happened. The bomb finally exploded. It destroyed the top floor of that building. It also blew away the $10 million that was stolen by Yuli. People in that city were happy because they got that money for free, including the two amateur robbers Asep and Yujang. That duo finally got out of the bank to pick that money. The police officers who saw them chased them immediately. Unlike other people who were happy with the money that was blown away by the bomb, Ningxi and Dodit were sad because Ningxi was severely injured. Ningxi finally died on Dodit's back. After Slamet killed Jankrik, he came to meet Joko to say goodbye. He had to go back to South Korea soon. Apparently, Shalakin was still alive. Kazuma managed to protect and save Ayu from the bomb explosion. They both survived from that horrible incident. In spite of that, Ayu was still sad because her mother had died. She had nobody now except Kazuma.